I've heard several times today that Warner Brothers was bought by Netflix, and I've heard people express concerns about how big a deal it is, how they don't want, like, slop single player games or slop shows and movies of Warner Brother properties. And honestly, isn't that a thing that was already happening? Like, weren't there already plenty of Warner Brothers property owned things that you were getting that you didn't like the Mortal Kombat movie and Multiverses, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League? Is this really a thing that's a big deal that people are concerned about? That this changing of hands or management will bring things that they don't like? Weren't you already getting plenty of things that you didn't like before? Also, just these huge acquisitions by companies don't feel like big deals in the first place anymore. I feel like we should be numb to this by now with things like Disney buying out Star Wars, or what was it? Xbox bought both Call of Duty and Bethesda. Yeah, Xbox bought both of those properties, which is funny in hindsight because they would later just announce Halo's going to be coming to PlayStation. But yeah, the Netflix WB thing, is this really a big deal to people? I mean, I get that it's kind of funny to be upset about things or to just react to things online, but I don't really see how this is going to change much of anything in terms of what you were getting before, or that you're going to be getting something super special or to be expected now. Because games take a long time to make now. Games take like 5 years minimum to make the AAA type of game that you're looking for. So anything that would come from this WB Netflix merger that would be like a high profile thing feels like it's going to be way in the future. And then the things that you don't like, I don't think it's really that big of a deal either way. You were getting that anyway. And you're probably going to be getting it in the future. Just a change of who's giving it to you now, I guess. I don't know. It's like, is it really a big deal? I don't think it is. Is the people real? Are people? Is this something people are really upset about or concerned about? Is what I'm asking, or is this just like a typical? Oh man, huge company spent a lot of money. We gotta all react to this. That's what it feels like, and that's what I'm going with. That's what I'm going with already. I've actually already made my decision. But on another note, it feels like lots of companies have been struggling with a direction in this new era of modern gaming. And one of the most common answers that they do is live service type games, specifically live service type shooters. Almost anytime they have new properties or new announcements, they're going to have at least one. We got a new live service hit extraction shooter, or a hit hero shooter, or a hit looter shooter, or something like that. And it's not a bad answer, even it's not a bad answer to just what they should be doing or ways to make lots of money. Even when it feels like the industry is oversaturated, there are plenty of games that find success in the industry. Like we had Marvel Rivals and First Descendant, which both of those feel like they could easily be things that people aren't looking for or aren't asking for. Marvel Rivals came out the same year Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League came out, and that game satisfied pretty much everybody. Everybody loved the way it looked. It played like Overwatch, which nobody was really upset with. In fact, people like a game that plays kind of familiar, to be honest. And First Descendants, looter shooter FPS MMO thing, this Destiny like, it's not really signaling anything in terms of like this is completely original. And that's not. I'm not saying that as like a bad thing. I'm saying that as like originality also is the thing that people like. It's one and the things that people think like, oh, this game needs to be absolutely original to sell. It's also not true. People just want something to be that looks kind of good and plays kind of and is fun to play. If it's familiar, then honestly, that's probably all the better because people will just be able to jump into it a lot easier. But yeah, we've had lots of live service FPS type things. That's mostly been the answer that Western studios have come up with. And one thing I'm surprised about is that not many Western studios copy format that Hoyoverse has done and gotcha games. And I'm actually a bit surprised about that because Hoyoverse seems like they've done everything that these companies would have wanted to do in the new era of modern gaming, I guess, is what I'm going to be going with. In modern gaming, Hoyoverse has come out with several new properties for every platform, including mobile, which most of the live service FPS type games aren't on mobile. Which is a platform that I think they'd want to look at, especially since most of the profits of video games in general come from mobile games. But anyway, Hoyoverse has gotten multiple new IPs, all for multiple platforms, including mobile, and an audience that is completely okay with their business model. In fact, I would say, an audience that is very loyal to and loyal and expecting, like hopeful of what Hoyoverse does. A fan base, I guess I should just say. Hoyoverse has built up a fan base that's pretty happy with what they do. Everything that I think most of these companies wish they could have, and I'm just surprised most of them don't try and copy that. Especially companies like WB, who had lots of properties, lots of big IPs, especially DC, that they could have made like an open world gotcha type game with. I'm just surprised many of them haven't picked that answer. I still think that a lot of gotcha games have the advantage of just how casual that they are. You can very easily move from one gotcha game to the next, not really worry about like skill gaps or metas in any sense. I guess while we're at it, another thing to address is that I think many people think that if I think there's a very vocal voice, I should say, that many people want single player games, better single player, more straightforward experience. Maybe I should say not just single player games, but like they want more straightforward experiences that aren't live service or don't need constant engagement. And they say that if companies just made those, the things that the people are asking for, then they'd make lots of money. And for that, I have to say they'd probably almost definitely still sell below the expectations that the companies want, even if they did sell well and were successful. We have a couple examples of those types of games, like the Dead Space remake, a game that everybody liked, sold well, but they still reported that it sold below expectations and they weren't going to be making the other Dead Space games. I think Alien Isolation was much the same way, a very well liked game that they didn't think sold to expectations and they weren't going to be making more of. But I think the most notable is definitely Hi-Fi Rush, a game that uh let's get let's just think about it for a second. Hi-Fi Rush basically shadow dropped in January, like the very beginning of the year, I think. And it's a game that had pretty much no advertisement, even though it is a triple A. Don't I can't believe it had like as much of a budget as something like a Marvel Spider-Man, Sony Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man. What was it called? I don't know. I don't remember what the full title of the Spider-Man games on PlayStation was called. I'm moving on. It wasn't. I don't think it had. I would not say it would have had the same amount of budget as a Spider-Man game or Starfield even. But it's a AAA game. It shadow drops with basically no advertisement at the beginning of the year, and it gets basically the most positive press and gets awards at the end of the year. It's probably the biggest success story that Xbox had in a long time, and it still didn't meet expectations. It was enough that the studio was still going to be closed down. Maybe that decision was made long before that, and they were just like, "All right, we're going to let you get your last game out anyway. It's already decided. We just haven't told you yet." But if that game with no advertisement and even getting all those positive accolades at the end still couldn't meet expectations, then what possible expectations? What expectations did they even have for it? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? If that game with basically nothing that they expected nothing from, couldn't meet expectations. It gets all this positive press. It probably sells well. It's the best thing that Xbox has done for a lot of people in a while. What can they make that's going to meet expectations? Or I guess I should say, what are the chances that they make a single player game and it doesn't meet expectations? I'd be more than willing to bet that they're just not going to be happy with a single player game or a straightforward experience game that's player focused. Although I think the choice to make a live service type game does get easier when, in most cases, when these games do fail, lots of studios just have lots of layoffs to mitigate the loss of profit. I think it's actually kind of like when you're playing a gotcha game and you use your parents' credit card, you might have missed out when you saved up yourself. But if you just spend that $60, if you just lay off those 160 workers, then you're guaranteed to get that 5 star. Then you're guaranteed to not feel as much of a loss. It's a lot easier when you don't have to make that decision with your own money or with your own job. You feel me? Does that make sense? I don't know. I've never worked in. I don't. I've never had a job in the game industry. Like, no, never. Not even as a QA tester or somebody who does game reviews. Obviously, not coding or actually building of any video games. Maybe I have a simplistic, nihilistic view. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But I feel like, but just like from an outsider perspective and a casual who plays a lot of video games, I feel like I. That's just. I guess that's just how I feel, looking at things. This also might be a simplistic, stupid view, but I don't think it's a good idea for any live service type game to actually launch with a base price, in addition to the fact that it's going to have an in game store and all this type of all the regular engagement, microtransactions stuff in the first place. I just think it's a bad idea because the whole reason you make a live service type game is because the money that you make from a single the money that you make from a single purchase, straightforward player focused experience, obviously that's not working as much for you anymore. So why even bother putting a barrier to entry and limiting your player base? Especially because one thing that players love to do is they love to make comparisons. They love to make comparisons on ratings, they love to make comparisons on player numbers. You don't want to give yourself any disadvantage in any of those terms. And if you give yourself a base price, which limits how many people are going to be able to play the game just in general, people can't even jump in and check it out, then obviously you're going to have lower player numbers than if you didn't have that base price. But obviously it works for some games and doesn't work for others. It worked for Arc Raiders, I think. And Multiverses is a good example of the opposite, where a game being, you know, free to play results in it having a very large player base and getting a lot of positive press, actually. You know, WB messed it up in the end, but because anybody could just jump in and check the game out, it was actually pretty popular for a while. I just think it's a better idea for a game to be free to play when trying to make the most money off of your live service type game, which is what this is about. This isn't about what I think games should do, it's just kind of like a casual observation of what game companies do and the direction games try and go. Or I guess I should say in the direction that games are kind of designed. Man, this is so unorganized, but I also can't fully blame companies for not listening to players because honestly, there's lots of examples when player outrage just doesn't actually lead to loss of sales. For instance, you know, one of the most in my memory, whenever I think of like players outrage not meaning anything at the end of the day, I always think of the game Diablo Immortal. It's a game that I remember people hating the absolute crap out of. People made videos dunking on it. It had that you guys not have phones incident. I remember so much of how everybody hated the shit out of the idea of Diablo Immortal. But do you know what happens if I look up Diablo Immortal now? With how much hate it got and how much people obviously didn't like Diablo Immortal. Diablo Immortal shouldn't exist now, right? Like, nobody liked that game, nobody was saying anything positive about it. Obviously, it shouldn't exist now if I were to, like, look it up. If I were to, like, get my phone out and look it up, Diablo Immortal shouldn't exist now. With how much players obviously voiced their dislike of the game. But if I look it up, that game has 290k reviews and an Editor's Choice Award on the app screen and is number 114 on role playing. For comparison, Genshin Impact Hoyo vs. Darling game has 558k ratings, a 4.3 total rating. The Editor's App Choice Award as well, and is number 50 on the role-playing chart. Which is obviously to say that there are lots of instances where players' outrage doesn't actually mean anything to sales. I can think of other instances like boycotting of Call of Duty, even boycotting of Pokemon when Pokemon Sword and Shield was coming out. Basically every Madden game that's come out, people complain about those all the time, but they're still billion-dollar moneymakers. Which is another story, but, you know, people are very vocal about how much they don't like those games. They have pretty much, I think they have lower than average ratings for games of that budget. But, you know, it's the thing that if people are going to complain but you're still going to make tons of money off of it, then why would you change up what you're doing? I mean, I guess it's the idea that they should be making games to make the players happy, but I mean, honestly, these are games made by AAA billion-dollar companies with shareholders and CEOs. We're gonna get plenty of good games like Expedition 33 and Hollow Knight Silksong that completely focus on players' enjoyment, but, you know, you're gonna get all other types of games like Madden. You're gonna get your Arc Raiders. You're gonna get your Suicide Squad Kill the Justice Leagues. You're gonna get all types of games, basically, all down the middle. It's just how it is. You're not gonna get rid of them. Just gotta find the good ones. It's honestly not. I honestly don't even think it's that hard to find the good ones. I did say I'd mention it at some point, but I do think there are times when, I do think there are definitely games that get compared to that shouldn't actually be compared to because they exist in very special circumstances. Like, I did mention Madden as an example of people always complain about, but always sells lots of copies, and I know the reason it does too. It's because they have the exclusive license to NFL teams and players, which is the biggest deal if you're going to make a football game or a basketball game. The players and teams' names. Like, if you don't have those, then you might as well not make a full-on simulation football game. You might as well just make like an arcade type game. Because that's the thing that people want the most, to play as the players and the teams that they like. It's a huge part of the brand. It's a huge part of the game, which is why they can keep doing it. Although it is still crazy. Imagine if in a gacha game like Genshin Impact that every year you had to pay $60 for the game and all your characters went away. But that's exactly what people do with like Madden and FIFA and 2K with the Ultimate Team or whatever Ultimate Team equivalent is. They pay $60 for a new game, and next year all that Ultimate Team stuff goes away, and as does any other things you bought in the game. I do think that's crazy. You think gacha game players are fucking insane? I could never imagine doing that. I could never imagine all my there's a good chance that if a gacha game, not a good chance, but if a gacha game service dies and all your stuff is just gone, I can't imagine like trying to get it back every year and pay it back every year. Ugh, that's crazy. Another game that I think is it's unfairly compared to. Obviously, I said Madden because Madden exists in a bubble that basically no other game does. No other game has exclusive access on the most important factors. Another game I think that It's a lot of unfair comparisons to it when people are looking at, when I think more specifically, not people, but executives, when executives and decision makers are looking at games and say, we needed to make as much as this and have as much impact as this, is Fortnite. Fortnite, that was a reasonable goal when Fortnite was just the most popular battle royale. But now Fortnite is basically everything. It's a racing game, it's a music game, it's Minecraft, it's Roblox, it's Lego. It has IPs from basically everything popular ever, including anime, TV shows, real life personalities. Everything is rolled up into Fortnite. It's not possible to have that kind of impact or influence as just a game out of the gate. There's basically nothing you can do to have as much popularity and influence as Fortnite. Actually, I guess GTA 6 would be pretty close, but that's also kind of a weird thing. I don't even know if GTA 6 actually exists. I'm not even sure if there are games that are close to it right now in terms of just like influence and popularity, because you know what's one thing about Fortnite that's I think no other game has? The very second something is popular, you can expect it to show up in Fortnite. When something is popular or good, it's almost like a foregone conclusion that at some point it will basically end up in Fortnite. That doesn't happen with everything. That doesn't happen with almost anything, especially not at the consistency and speed that it does in Fortnite. K-pop Demon Hunter, I think, came out like a year or two ago, and it showed up in Fortnite. Because that's just what you do. It's like if a video game... It's like if Nintendo came up to you and was like, hey, do you want your character to be in Smash? You just say, yes! Do you want your thing to be in Fortnite? Yes! Of course we do! Okay, this is less on game industry and more on people, but I know I talked about comparisons earlier, like people like to make lots of comparisons from how many players are playing right now, what's the rating right now, but people also like to, I think gamers are really good at actually killing games. If I look up is Fortnite, I think in the top 10 searches for some reason, I get is Fortnite dead or dying. I get that for almost all multiplayer games, to be honest. One big question that people always seem to have is blank dying? Is the most popular game in the world dying? Is the least popular game in the world dying? Is that game I hate dying? Is the game I like dying? People are curious and people are very quick to say the very second a game drops off, or if a game they think might compete with a game that they like, they're very quickly to say that game is dying. They're very quickly to say that YouTuber or that Twitch channel is dying. They complain that companies try to kill games. Gamers try and kill games way, way more often. They obviously don't have the same effectiveness, but they they sure damn do try and kill them. I just think that's funny that people do that all the time, even when it doesn't make sense. Why would Fortnite be dying? Most video games have a fraction of the player base that Fortnite has. Why would Fortnite be dying? I know that we all like to feel like we're playing the most popular things at all times, but you know, just enjoy the things that you enjoy and don't worry too much if it has 100% approval rating across the board from everybody and everything. Well, I think that's all that I have for now. Sorry about the lack of organization or the fact that I stutter a lot. I just really wanted to make a video like this about what I thought about the game industry as like a casual. I'm glad I did it, but I wish I could have organized it a bit better. It's hard for me to keep my thoughts straight when I'm just rambling on in my room by myself. I could have made a script, but I don't really like doing that. Anyway, bored now. Video's over.